All right, we're going to mark up the tube for the fins now. So we've pulled out the fin marking guide, and it's also got the shock cord. Remember earlier on I said we're going to save this because it has all your engines that you can use with this rocket, the recommended engines, C11.7 all the way to G8010. It has our shock cord anchor, and it has our fin tube marking guide. So got our X-Acto knife. We're going to cut this out. And I try and cut out my marking guides fairly straight and accurate. Something I always do when I start a new rocket, I start with a new X-Acto knife. I'll take this now and set it off to the side. To me, it's very, very important to have a sharp X-Acto knife, so I always start off with a new blade when I start off a rocket if I'm cutting things with a blade. I'd rather replace an inexpensive blade than have to go through the pain and heartache of damaging a rocket body tube or a fin or something of that nature. Now we've got our shock cord anchor pattern here. We're going to stick that in our little Ziploc baggie. Remember, it's something we don't want to lose, so if we stick it in the baggie with our other little parts, we're not going to lose it. So there we go. Then it goes into our tote. All right. Okay, so now we've got our anchor, our tube marking guide. I need our Scotch tape. And remember, we marked our tubes 1 and 2. Doesn't really matter which one's top or bottom. So you can just decide which one you want to use. Just remember, you don't want to put the fins on the marked side. You want to put it on your unmarked side. So we're going to take a little bit of Scotch tape. And we got that ready. We're going to wrap our marking guide around, and we're going to line up our overlap marks so that we're squared up on this. And our little chick marks right here are lined up. Again, we're going to make sure this is nice and tight around the tube. Then we're going to tape it on. Now I actually, every time I get a rocket kit, I copy or scan all the instructions, any fin marking guides. If I have a shock cord anchor made out of paper, I'll copy that into the memory. I'll scan the decals. I'll scan everything into memory. The idea is that if I ever need to come back and reproduce anything, I can do that. So by having it on memory in the computer, I have it forever, hopefully. All right, so we're going to mark the ticks for our fins. Now, you can mark top and bottom. The way I do it, I only need to mark one mark because I use the angle alumina. Now, here's our launch lug one. I'm going to mark it top and bottom so that I know that that one is our launch lug mark. And then we'll mark the rest of the fin marks just at the top. Now, with the fins, you can go with 3 fins or 4 fins. 3 fins will give you added speed because less drag. It can give you less weight, which means added speed also. The drawback is you have less stability. So it's a toss-up between stability and speed. I'm going to go ahead and go with all 4 fins. Obviously, if you go with 3 fins, you have to change up and go to a 3-fin template pattern. I'm going to throw this in my little baggie too, so now I have it. This will all go, things like this will go into an envelope when I'm done with the build, along with the original instructions, and that gets filed away in my little booklet. Okay, so now we've got our tube marked. We need to continue those markings all the way up the body tube. We're going to do that using the angled alumina. I'm done with the X-Acto knife, so let's put it away. Clean space, neat space, organized space means you're not getting hurt, you're not losing parts. So we take our angled alumina, And all we're going to do is we're going to line up one of the tick marks that we made right at the edge of the alumina, and then we're just going to draw our line. Now, the fins aren't going all the way up. We're only going up to about 4 inches, less than 4 inches high. So I can sit here and look at it and say, okay, 4 inches. I don't need to take any of my marks any higher than, well, 3/4 inch is where we're going to start at. So let's go ahead and mark a 3/4 inch mark down here at the bottom. So that's 3/4 right there. And then we'll do like we've done all the other times. We're going to mark it all the way around the body tube. So now we have a alignment point for putting the fins on the bottom. And then the fins themselves are, you can see they're still in the paper here, I haven't cut them loose. They're less than 2 inches across. So if I go up 2 inches from there, we'll just say let's go an even 4 inches all the way up. So right about there. So long as I take all my marks from here down, I'll be good. So let's line up our mark, and we'll just go like this. And then again, our launch lug, we're going to go ahead and make that one a lot longer so that we know that that is the launch lug. So let's take it all the way up like that and all the way down to the bottom so we know that's the launch lug. And we'll take this one up and this one here. One more to go. Now I'm going to let you in on a secret. If you're using the guillotine fin jig or any other fin alignment guide, you can get away with doing just the one mark. You actually don't even need to do the marks. If you are using airfoiled fins like I have done here where we have the airfoil, just to draw an example on a little scratch piece of paper here. Remember the airfoil, we've got, instead of a square fin like this, we have now made the fin airfoiled or teardropped. This point might not be dead center, and this point may not be dead center down the fin. It may be that you're a little bit off, and now it's no longer dead center. You're a little offset one way or the other. So to prevent from having your fins out of alignment, you would do a mark, and then you move over the width of your balsa wood from that first mark and make another mark. So you would literally have down your body tube 2 marks, and you would lay your fin when you glue it in between those 2 marks if you're doing it all by hand. That will give you centered for the fin. Now you can also check after you have all 4 fins on, if you glue them quickly, if you measure the tip of the fin to the tip of the fin, let's say it's 3 inches, to the tip of the next fin should be 3 inches, to the next fin should be 3 inches. So it should be equal from tip to tip, tip to tip, everywhere you go. And you can also take your speed square or straight edge and check it that way to make sure that they're straight across. There's all sorts of ways. I'll be using the Estes fin jig, so I don't have to worry about making sure that I have the alignment perfectly straight on my marks, because the fin jig will do all that work for me. Now we're putting the fins on. I've already got 3 of the 4 fins on. If you're doing this by hand, this is where having that little block I told you that I had that has the groove in the top, you can use the groove to hold it up while you're gluing your fins on. And then you can take anything that will stand true and level and use it on the back side to check that your fins are actually standing up true and straight. So that's a great method about this. And then when you, obviously the fin would keep it from sitting on there, you can put this on a book or you can hang it off the edge of the table. So it's a great little tool that I have for doing this with. I also have the Estes fin jig that I'm using today. It's a little bit difficult to use it because these fins are airfoiled, so they're not flat and true anymore. They have a taper like a wing, so it makes it kind of difficult for the piece to stay flat against here with this on there also. So I kind of have to find about the middle and run this up the middle and hope I've got everything squared up right where it's supposed to be when I set it in there. So the way I'm using the jig today, I've got everything up nice and tight against the rocket to hold the rocket in place. I've gone through and checked a dozen times to make sure that all my fins are sitting straight and nice and pretty on the alignment here. Trying to make sure that everything comes out looking good. And once we've got everything set up, we're going to apply the fin. Now, the way I do this is I have a timer using my phone stopwatch, and I'm going to time 1 minute from the time I get the glue on. So I'm going to put the glue on, and I'm just going to put a little bit up there, and then I'm going to dab it across, make sure I've got glue all the way across the wood edge. Now, I'm using Elmer's Wood Carpenter's glue, and I like this glue because it grabs. Now I'm going to hit the stopwatch, and we're going to count down a minute. Now this glue is a really good glue. I don't recommend using it for mounting engine rings and stuff like that because it grabs so quickly that you'll have a hard time to getting your rocket rings all the way on in place fast enough. So go ahead and use your white glue for that. But when you're putting fins on, this wood glue is really good. You put on the small bit, you dab it with your finger to get it evenly spread off and get the excess off, and you let it sit for 1 minute. It's going to kind of get a little bit tacky, a little bit hard, and it grabs the tube so much stronger, and you're not watching your fin sliding down. If you have it standing horizontal, if you got it horizontal, you'll see the fin tends to stand a little bit better, and you really don't have to hold it as much. Still watch it, make sure you have your good alignment. We all like to see straight flights without corkscrews. Minute's almost up. And this is a method that I've used for years, and it works really, really well for me. Okay, so that's our minute. Now we're going to just slide her in place, and I put a ring on the bottom on how high up the fins have to sit. So I'm hitting that mark, checking multiple times that I'm on that mark and that all the fins look even. And that looks pretty good. We have full adhesion contact all the way up the side. It's not bending backwards or forwards. So we're going to double check and make sure it's straight on our line. Looks good on the line there. And everybody else looks pretty good. The glue is sufficiently dried to go ahead and put on the fin fillets now. So we've got the fins on there. They're nice and tight. Looks like they're lined up really, really good. Everything looks pretty straight. So we're going to be using Fixit epoxy. I get this from Apogee Components, and it's an AB epoxy clay. Works really, really good. I've had these containers for quite some time now. I've done a level 1 rocket, my Torrent, and a lot of my other smaller rockets with this stuff. It's really, really good. And you're just going to use equal amounts. A little goes a long, long way of the two mixtures. A little bit more of that. Just a little bit more A. I have, again, a lot of these tools that I use various ways while building my rockets. But keep your tools clean. I'll say that right now. You got to keep them clean or you will be fighting dirty tools and problems that causes constantly. So we're going to go ahead and knead the epoxy clay together until it's a uniform color. We're going to make little worms, put the worms onto the fin, press it in place, and then smooth it out either using our putty knife, little tool that I have, a popsicle stick, or whatever you have available to work. A lot of clay tools will also work with this. It is temperature sensitive. Most epoxies are exothermic setting, so if it's hot, it's going to go quickly. If it's cooler out, it's going to be a little bit slower. So just remember that when you're working with this. Again, just a small amount goes a long, long way. Make a little worm out of it. We're going to lay the worm over the area we're going to take care of. And you see me keep wiping my fingers on towels. This stuff gets very sticky very quickly, and if you don't wipe your fingers, it'll stick to your fingers. So I'm going to push it into the fin. Don't worry about the excess. You can wrap that around. And then, like I said, you can use a tool. You can use your finger. You can use your popsicle stick, whatever you feel like using to smooth out that fillet. When you get to the end, be careful how you pull so you don't pull the excess off. Go the other way. So when I get to the end, I do kind of a twisty down into the body tube motion. And that gives me my rough fillet. Now, I can take and smooth this out a little bit more using a popsicle stick. And being careful at the end. And then when I've got it just about how I want it, I'm going to dip my finger in some alcohol, and then I'm going to rub it along the fillet. And you can see how that kind of shines it up just a little bit. So that smooths out the fillet a little bit and makes it look nicer. Okay, so now we're going to take the little bit of leftover clay. Like I said, a lot goes a long way. Roll it out. Drop it on the other side. Wipe the fingers off again. Push it in place. Once you have it pushed in place, a little around the top, we're going to take our popsicle stick again and again wipe it off. Wipe your tools off constantly. Clean tools makes everything work a lot easier. We're going to draw it along. A little turnout at the end. And this stuff is really, really sandable. And I'm going to take and we're going to do our drag the opposite way. Taper it off there. And we're going to push that around a little bit up front, make a nice foot up front. And then we're going to smooth it with water or the alcohol, whichever you prefer to use. And this stuff is highly sandable, so don't worry if you get it a little bit somewhere, because it'll sand off fairly easy. I like the alcohol because it really makes it slick when you're smoothing it out. So that's our fillet for one. And you know, if you really, really want to clean it up, you can take a sharp object and just kind of pick off the pieces that you want. Straighten it up and then smooth out wherever you made a mark. And there we go. A little bit neater of a looking foot. So now we're going to let this dry after we finish the other ones, and then we'll be into putting the two pieces together. Now you can see why I don't put the upper part onto this part, because then I have this long rocket that I'm moving around on my desk and it gets in the way. So some of the things we can do while we're waiting for this epoxy putty to dry. I told you about using the thin CA glue to stiffen up things. We're going to use it to stiffen up inside here on the 24mm adapter. I'm just smearing the glue around the inside, giving it a good coat. And then I'm going to take a paper towel or a cloth towel. I'm going to take a towel and I'm going to put it in there and wipe out the excess really, really quick. We don't want it to stick like that. And don't worry if it do kind of stick a little bit, because you're going to sand it after a bit. So we do that. We're going to get the other end. And the idea of this will help protect the end from damage from ejection charges and the likes of that. So you can see now that we've coated the inside on both ends. So what else do I have to do? Well, I need to protect these rings too, because they're going to be going in and out of the rocket. So we're just going to give them a little coat of the CA glue too. Again, thin CA. It won't go and penetrate if you don't use thin CA. We're going to go all the way around. Give it a few seconds to soak in. Give it a quick wipe. Do the same thing on the other side. Yeah. Give it a coat. Let it soak in for a few seconds, and you can see where it's not soaking in as well. That's where the white glue got onto the rings. So now, after this dries for a little bit, we're going to take it and we're going to insert it into the rocket. If it's a tight fit, we're going to take some of our sandpaper and we're going to give it a light sanding. Now we're also going to coat the inside of the body tubes, and we're going to coat this one down here at the bottom, and I'm going in probably about a ½ inch. I'm going from a ½ inch in all the way to the tail of it. So you can see there, I've gone in quite a bit. We're going to let that soak in a little bit, and then we're going to wipe it out. Now this is going to protect the rocket from ejection gases. It's going to protect the end piece here from the constant insertion removal of motors. That's going to wear if you don't protect it some. So this is a way I use to help protect that from excessive wear and premature failure of that part. So again, thin CA glue, coating just where you need to. I missed a little spot there. And you're only going to be doing your 24mm motor mount adapter, both ends and the rings. On the main body, you're going to do the tail end, and then when you mount your two pieces together, you're going to do the shoulder for the inside shoulder for the nose cone, because that's going to be blowing off, coming on and on. I'm not worried about this because I'm going to be putting a coupler and gluing that all together, so that's going to never be subjected to the problems there. Normally at this time I'd go ahead and glue my top part on. We're going to do that, and then we would turn around and also fill in any spirals we have. We don't have spirals with this. The only filling we're going to be doing is where the coupler meets the body tube. The tubes that Apogee uses are really neat tubes. They hardly have any exposed spiral at all, and what little exposed spiral is there, you'll be able to fill with primer. Okay, so remember on our tubes, we marked them 2 and 1. Let's find our marks. There's our mark. And our alignment ticks, we've got those together. We also marked our coupler 1 and 2, and we have an alignment mark there. So I'm using white glue because I don't want it to grab too fast. The wood glue grabs really fast, and I'm not wanting that. I'm going to smear the glue around. Now remember, this is a 2.5 inch coupler, so we're going to go and smear glue for 1.25 inches. Now you don't want to go crazy heavy, but you don't want to go too light either. So I'm smearing glue around the inside. Quick wipe the excess off on my finger. Now we're going to take number 2 and we're going to line it up with the 2 mark. We're going to put it in and quickly get it in there and get it to our mark and turn it. See, it's trying to grab already. There we go. We're at our mark and we've got it lined up. So we're going to turn that straight up and down. We're going to let that dry for a little bit. The reason I don't want to lay it on its side is because that glue will pool to the bottom side. This way, if there's excess glue inside, it's going to run straight down. Now you can take a wooden dowel or or something and try and smear any extra glue that's inside around, you can use your finger and try and get the extra glue out of there. And the idea is that we don't have a lot of excess weight in there. We don't have glue dribbles running down one side or the other, because that's going to cause a weight distribution problem. You're going to have more weight on one side than another. We don't want that. So after that's had a chance to set up, we're going to glue the top part on. All right, the glue's had enough time to dry on the first part of the coupler to take care of the second. So we're not going to smear glue on the outside of the coupler. If we do that, when we slide together, we'll have excess glue up here on our seam, and it can build up and we end up with a funky body paint look. So we're going to put the glue, just like we did with the first coupler, inside the tube. And again, you want to use a reasonable amount of glue, not a heavy excessive amount, but a reasonable amount, because it actually helps to lubricate when you initially slide the body tube in. So we're going to smear the glue around. Make sure it's nice, even coat all the way around the tube. And then we're going to wipe our finger off. Find our alignment marks. And we're going to be quick and fast and get it together and right up to our mark. There we go. There's our mark. So now if I need to check this to make sure it's still true, I can just take it like this. I don't see any tail wobble. I don't see the front rolling or wobbling funny, so that's good. Now again, we're going to put it straight up and down. We don't want to put it on its side, because then the glue will run down one side and puddle, and then we'll have a lopsided rocket or off-balance rocket. Later on, after all the glue dries, we're going to do a little sanding here. There are some dings and dents from manufacturing to smooth this out. So we're going to smooth the collar out. Then we're going to fill it with the wood putty. And after we fill it with the wood putty, or the wood filler, we're going to sand it, and then do the shot cord and the nose cone and a streamer attachment. And then we're going to be ready for primer.